All right, so thank you everyone for joining us today for another CircleCI webinar. My name is Vinny and I am a solutions engineer at CircleCI. Joining me today is Gleb, the VP of Engineering at Cypress, and we will be talking to you today about how you can set up faster and easier end-to-end browser testing using CircleCI and Cypress. On the agenda, we're going to both give quick introductions of ourselves, and then after that, we'll immediately dive into the core content. I'm going to give you a quick introduction to CircleCI, what it is, and how our orbs ecosystem has helped us partner with tons of other companies and applications in the industry to bring easier functionality and CI/CD to all of you in your engineering teams. From there, I will give control over to Gleb, and we will segue into talking about what Cypress is, how to use it, and how Cypress has partnered together with CircleCI to make all of this easier to set up and get started for you. Finally, we will end the session with any Q&A and any questions that you might have. And so at any time during this presentation, you can feel free to pop your questions into the chat. We can try to answer them in line. However, we will most likely get to your questions at the end. If that all sounds good, let's go ahead and have a go. Again, my name is Vinny. I'm a solutions engineer with CircleCI. I've been at CircleCI for just a little over a year now. My primary responsibilities are on the pre-sales side. So I work with our account executives and salespeople to talk to customers, answer their technical questions, do technical demonstrations, webinars like this, and formerly going to conferences. And now I'd like to introduce my co-host, Gleb.
Hi everyone, my name is Gleb Bakhmutov. I'm VP of Engineering at Cypress. I've been with the company for 3 years and I used Cypress for a year before. So I'm a veteran. For this particular webinar, I'm the one who has written CircleCI Cypress orb, which is kind of exciting.
Awesome. Thank you, Gleb. Really appreciate that. So without further ado, let's hop right into it. What is CircleCI? For those of you who don't know, basically our mission is to make it as easy as possible to go from idea to delivery. We were founded in 2011 and we're now at 300 employees, more than 300 employees across 5 continents. I was going to make a joke about Antarctica here, but somebody already mentioned Antarctica earlier, so you ruined my joke. Okay. We help teams build better software quickly and more reliably. And the way we do this is providing the world's largest shared CI/CD platform. We run over 1 million builds per day in the cloud. We offer a variety of features that help supercharge your engineering team's productivity and flexibility. And below here, you'll see some logos of some of our biggest and most representative customers. And there are many more who we are not allowed to show you. So let's see here. Where CircleCI sits in the toolchain, if you are familiar with CI/CD, you'll probably, this probably looks very familiar to you, but upstream, you essentially have your VCS tools where you collaborate and work on code. As soon as you commit changes to your code, you trigger builds on CircleCI. And so in CircleCI, you, excuse me, I used the word builds. I meant to say pipelines. You trigger pipelines in CircleCI. And so in CircleCI, you can powerfully, flexibly configure jobs and workflows to do a variety of different workloads. You can do unit tests, integration tests. We have people linting their code. We have people generating documentation, deploying documentation. After you've finished all of the work that you want to do, typically for most of our customers, the final step of the process is to actually deploy said code. And then on the right downstream here, you can see that we support a variety of different major cloud services. The truth of the matter is we actually support pretty much any service that has an API and is reachable. And that's because of how flexible our configuration on our platform is configured. You will be seeing that here in a very quick demo. So if I flip over to a pull request on GitHub here, you can see that I have a whole bunch of different commits, and next to these commits, you will see these checks and X's, which indicate whether a build was successful or failed on CircleCI. Let me show you a failed one first. If I open this, you will be taken to the checks page on GitHub where you can see the information about the workflow that ran and why it failed. So if I click on this job right here, you are taken to what is called the job details page in CircleCI. The job details page is a very clean overview of the particular workload that ran. In this case, I ran a test job here. And you can see as a developer, I am immediately given the information that I care about and want, right? You can see that all of these other steps passed and they succeeded, so they're collapsed, but then this step failed, and so it's expanded by default. I ran
Vinny,
a test suite here.
Vinny,
What's
can
up?
I just pause you for a second? Why are you showing test cafe test in the Cypress? I'm just joking, but
Oh
it's
no,
all good.
it's yeah, sorry about that. It's
That's why
actually,
we
while you
failed. That's
mentioned
why we
that.
failed.
Oh, okay, all right. It failed because I used Testcafe. You're totally right. To that point, though, CircleCI actually uses Cypress on our user interface testing, and so we it's just that this is my demo project, which is why it's not using Cypress. But you know, if you might convince me to change it to using Cypress.
Maybe let's see the end of the webinar.
Okay, sounds good. But anyways, you can see here that I'm immediately given the information that I want as a developer, right? And so now I can see, hey, this particular test has failed. This is the information I want. Up here, you can see information about the job itself. You might have noticed the time here, when it ran, when it finished, and then you can see here Docker Medium. So one of the features of CircleCI is the ability to configure flexible resources, which means that you can scale up or down the amount of RAM as well as the number of cores inside your environment. This is useful because maybe you're not doing anything heavy or intensive and you can scale down, and that subsequently costs less money, or maybe you're doing some very intense builds. Maybe you're doing a Bazel build. Maybe you're linting thousands of files. Whatever the case is, you can scale all the way up to our 2XL plus resource size, which gives you 20 cores and 40 gigs of RAM or something outrageous like that. So this is an example of the job details page here, but this is of a failing test. So let me show you a nicer looking green one here. In the passing test, you can see here that all the other jobs in the workflow did run because the first job succeeded, right? And so let me go up one screen and show you the workflow. What I showed you just now was a job, and then if you go up one level, you have what's called a workflow. Workflows consist of individual jobs and their relationship to each other. The way CircleCI has architected its platform is very flexible and powerful because you can directly set dependencies between specific jobs. And so rather than relying on multi-stage tiers and putting jobs in stages, you can have jobs directly depend on each other, and that might not necessarily have a good stage configuration for it. And so how does this all actually look in configuration? Well, let me show you. So you can see here on the right-hand side, I've got configuration for all of my CircleCI stuff. Is this text a good size, Gleb, by the way? Okay, awesome, thank you. So if I go to the workflows definition here, you can see that what I've defined here, test parallel, parameterized command, these are all what you see on the left-hand side. Now, you might have noticed that there's a whole bunch of other configuration that you don't see on the left-hand side right now, and that is because we offer the capability to filter certain jobs to only run on certain branches, and that's what you're seeing here with the filters branches only master. That's why you're not seeing additional stuff. If I go back into a test parallel job right here, and I go to test parallel, sorry, it's test dash parallel. Here it is. So if you look at this job that I've defined right here, you can see that the steps on the left-hand side and the steps on the right-hand side, the config, match exactly, right? You start off by checking out the code. Every environment is going to have a spin up environment and prepare environment variable step, and that's because all jobs in CircleCI start cleanly from scratch. And so what this means for you is that you don't have to worry about leftover artifacts or indeterministic behavior from previous runs of jobs, etc., like you do with other CI/CD providers, and this is very handy. However, because each environment is starting from scratch, sometimes you can waste a lot of time doing the same thing over and over, and that's why we offer strong dependency caching. You can see here I have a restore cache step, which is basically for this particular use case and scenario, I am restoring my node modules folder for my Node.js project. If you're using Ruby, you'd be restoring Ruby gems. If you're using Gradle or Java, you'd be restoring the Gradle cache, etc. And so by using the cache, you can dramatically cut down on the amount of time it takes to actually run and install dependencies. Now we finally get to actually running the tests and executing results. Another feature on CircleCI that's very powerful is the ability to parallelize your tests. What I'm doing here is I'm using the CircleCI CLI tool to dynamically take all of the test files or test classes that you have or that I have in the collection and then split them evenly and distribute the workload evenly among multiple containers. On the very top line here, you can see I defined the parallelism to be 4, and subsequently CircleCI will automatically test and balance and run each of those sections of tests among these 4 containers. And that's what you're seeing here between these four little boxes. That's just another powerful feature that people love about CircleCI alongside the resource classes. And then finally, if we jump to the highest level on our pipelines page, the pipelines page will show you all of the pipelines that have run for all of your project. And then you can browse according to projects here for whichever pipelines that you were particularly looking for. And so this has been a quick demonstration of the CircleCI platform. And now if I hit, oh, sorry, I clicked the wrong button here. Zoom's little drop down thing at the top kind of gets in the way. I can't browse anything and click around. Okay, so to the point that I made earlier, the way CircleCI uses Cypress is we restore the cache with specific Cypress dependencies, and then we actually just execute Cypress, the Cypress test suite as part of our yarn or Node.js dependencies. And so this is a kind of an example of the output that we're seeing when we run the Cypress tests. And then if I show you here, here's a little GIF of a little video that Cypress records. So Cypress is actually able to record videos of the actual browser tests that it's running. And what we've actually done is we've artifacted these videos inside CircleCI artifacts so that you can view them as an engineer. You can go through and take a look and see exactly what's going on, etc. It's a very useful combination of features that Cypress and CircleCI offer together. And so this segues to the next and final part of CircleCI's section, which is orbs, right? What you saw earlier was CircleCI's user interface, dashboard, how people use CircleCI, configure everything, etc. And so what are orbs? Well, orbs are basically just reusable, shareable packages of that same configuration that I just showed you, right? And this configuration that's shareable and templatable, you can use that to set certain actions and set certain jobs, executors, etc., and then reuse that across all of your projects, multiple organizations even. And that is what allows us to partner together with companies like Cypress. You can see here in this example that I've got a reusable command here, which is called say hello. It takes in a parameter. I've got a reusable executor here, which also takes in a parameter. And then I've got a job here below, which just makes use of that executor and that step or that command that I've defined. On CircleCI, these orbs are powerful because you can template and share and reuse individual commands, just single commands. You can reuse in executors or essentially environments. You can define environments for all your teams, and you can reuse entire jobs, which Gleb will actually show you here in a little bit. And so because of this powerful, flexible orbs feature, we are able to partner together with various different companies who have partnered together with us to provide functionality and configuration out of the box for you to use. Here is an existing page of existing integrations that we have already. We have about 58 CircleCI maintained orbs that we write and are working on ourselves. We have increased the number of partner orbs and integrations up to 81. And so here are some of the icons that you see here of people who have written orbs to integrate with their particular applications. You might see some of the more common ones like CodeCov, Anchor-E, JFrog, Sauce Labs, Postman, etc. And naturally, Cypress is one of these people as well. And then we also have CircleCI orbs for deploying to all of the major cloud providers. As you can see, tons of the functionality has already been written for you and is super easy to pick up and use right away. These slides, if you would like to have access to these slides and be able to click into these links, you can always email our marketing department after this webinar is over to request for these slides. However, these are various links to pages and blog posts, documentation, etc., for more information about everything. And so, having said all that, I would now like to give control to Gleb.
Thank you, Vinny. I really like your introduction to Circle and orbs. You showed it very, very well. It's really nice to see a demo like that. I want to remind everyone who's watching that in Zoom, there is a Q&A widget. So if you have any questions about anything that Vinny has said or what I'll say, just post a question and we'll answer all the questions at the end of this presentation. So now I will actually talk about an orb, a concrete orb, and I'll show how you can use it to run Cypress end-to-end tests on Circle with literally a single line in a config. Okay, so, too fast. Cypress is a tool, open source tool that you can use to write fast and easy tests for running in a real browser. You can test a website, a web application, anything that runs in a browser can be tested with Cypress. And if you're familiar with Node infrastructure, then you can install Cypress. It's just npm install Cypress. And when you write a test using an example like shown here, where you visit a URL, you find an input element, you type something like a user, then you type something else, and the tests are kind of self-explanatory, I think. And then you check that there are really free to do items. So let's see how it looks. This is a video of Cypress in action. So it opens a real browser. In this case, this is Electron that's included, but you can control Chrome or Firefox or the new Microsoft Edge, whatever you have pre-installed on your machine or on CI. And when the test runs, you will see the actual application on the right side. It's your site, iframed, and then on the left, you see all the commands from the test file shown in a GUI. And when you hover over a command, you will see how the application looked at that particular moment. So we have a time travel and debugger. You can debug each command. It's a real live application. Everything that I'm showing here is open source, MIT license, so you can feel safe using it. So to open Cypress locally and work and see that, you use Cypress open command. We call it interactive run. How do you run Cypress on CI? Right? Well, there is a command called Cypress run. In that case, it runs all the tests, but it doesn't actually open the full browser. It runs usually headlessly. And it's, in theory, very simple, right, Vinny? You just say Cypress run. But what about installing all operating system dependencies, right, for running the full browser? What about installing NPM dependencies like Cypress, which downloads the binary we built for your operating system, which is a big download? So you want to cache those dependencies. You don't want to reinstall them on every build. What about passing all the various options to Cypress run? How do you make that easy? So I've been lucky enough to work on Cypress for a long time, and part of my job was to kind of giving examples of running Cypress on various CIs. So you can find the full list at the link, but nothing there is simple, right? Everyone has their own weird syntax. Every CI has a bunch of YAML or JSON or whatever format they pick, and it was usually a very frustrating experience as a user. You copy paste an example, you push it to your repo, and when you look at that CI, and you're like, oh, something's wrong. Now I have to adjust my YAML, commit, push it again. And the whole iteration was nothing but frustration. So when we heard about CircleCI coming out with orbs, we got super excited. The orbs is an interesting idea. They shift responsibility for running the tool from the user, all of you, to me, the author of the tool, right? So you can see that CircleCI Cypress orb, we started working on it a year and a half ago in October of 2018. I put those commits there, so you don't have to. Like, this completely shifts how things are done. When we just got something released, we did another webinar with Circle, our first webinar together, where we show the orb in action. So you can compare the two webinars, that one and this one, to kind of see, you know, if our perspective changed. I don't think it has changed a lot, but if you just want to see how we started and the main principles, you can check out this webinar with the video and slides. Unfortunately, it's Eddie, not Vinny, so. You can find that orb on circleci.com/orbs/registry. Like, that's the official documentation page that shows how many versions, when it was released, the home page. But also, Vinny mentioned the CircleCI CLI command. The one you can install locally, or it's available in CircleCI images when you run it. You can use that command locally to see the orb information. So you can do CircleCI orb info cypress-io/cypress, and you will see that, you know, when it came out, how many versions there are. So we've been iterating on this orb for a long time now. There are 32 releases, and they include new features and also bug fixes and so on. And you can also see that more than 500 organizations are already using this orb. So we've been looking up different partner and third-party orbs, Vinny, and we found that we are pretty much one of the most popular ones. I think the only one from partner orbs that's more popular, I think, is CodeCov for sending code coverage, but we are like close behind it. Okay, so lessons learned, right? So we've been working on orb for a while. This is the README from the orb itself on GitHub. Again, it's all open source and MIT license. The number one lesson for anyone who's writing an orb or looking at someone else's orb is don't put hello world example first, right? I'm not writing hello world. You're not using hello world. Put first an example that's already useful. So in our, README, the first example we call simple. Here it is. This example is a typical user-facing workflow. In this case, you want to use Cypress on your CI run. So you say orbs, Cypress. So that's the name you give orb when you import it. And when you import cypress-io/Cypress version 1. So it will pull the latest orb that we have written, but still has a major version of 1. Okay. And then in your workflow, instead of you writing the job definition, you just say Cypress/run. So this run job comes from Cypress orb where you just imported above. Honestly, seems very simple, right? There are only like 5 lines of actual YAML code. This example, in my opinion, should satisfy 90% of Cypress users right out of the box. Because this orb does everything that a user typically has to do, which is cache npm dependencies and Cypress. Install Cypress correctly, could be yarn, could be packed, npm CI. Then it has to include the right Docker or machine that has already all OS dependencies pre-installed. And finally, run Cypress correctly. So this particular simple example that comes in first covers so much and yet looks so simple. The interesting thing about orbs is that when you're trying to figure out what will happen on CI, you don't have to push the configuration and then wait for CI to pass or fail. The orb is just a text substitution language, right? When you define an orb, the CircleCI build system will take that orb and it will expand the orb and replace your command Cypress run with actual orb commands. It's literally a macro language. So what can you do? You can say CircleCI, which is CLI command from Circle. You can say CircleCI config process and give your YAML file locally, and it will expand and do all orb substitutions, and it will show you right there in your terminal what the final configuration will be. What you see on the left is equivalent to the orb. Is just all those commands are hidden from you. I've written them. So you as a user can just say Cypress run, and in reality, you will run all those commands and you can see the commands and understand what is about to happen without pushing things to CI. You can inspect everything. It's all done as a pre-process. Another lesson that we learned is that once you have a simple example that should be what majority of people came, for initially, then you should give a couple of more advanced examples that are also useful and probably should satisfy users as they expand their usage of orb. So look at the examples that we give after the simple one. So let me play the video. So we have 3 examples in the README: the simple plus recording on a dashboard, and more complicated parallel testing example, right? Isn't it funny, Vinny, how you showed example and you span 4 boxes, and our documentation talks exactly about the same case, right? A parallelizing test.
Yeah.
Because I think we understand our users, right? And we hit the same problem, and we're trying to optimize the orb for common usage. By the way, so I will mention this later, but there are other examples linked. So we have lots of examples, but they're linked in a different doc from README. By default, we show the most useful case and then a couple of more advanced scenarios. You control the orbs by using parameters. So for example, let's say you're a user and you want to store all the test results and all the videos and screenshots, not on CI machine, which you can do, but upload it to the Cypress dashboard so you can see them in one place. And let's say you don't remember the syntax. What parameter to Cypress run job is that? So you just say recording. Maybe you remember it. Something has to do with recording. You say recording true. So because Circle has a CircleCI CLI command that expands all the orbs, you can statically check your configuration yourself before you actually push the CI. You say CircleCI config validate, and you give your CircleCI YAML file path, and it will tell you there is an error. Unexpected argument recording. Now, you can argue if the error messages could be better, right? I think that could be better, but at least you'll know that this YAML file, the ones that you're about to push, is incorrect. So what do you do then? You go to the orb documentation and you look up the actual parameter, and it's not recording, it's record, right? So all the parameters are explained in an orb page on Circle and in our README docs. So in this case, you say record and you change it. And once you use record, so this is how you would run, it actually uploads the test results, the videos, the screenshots to the Cypress dashboard. That's how Cypress makes money, right? You can use the test runner yourself, absolutely no limitations. But if you have a lot of tests and you want to see all the test results in one place where it's easier to figure out what went wrong, you use our dashboard. And that's all you have to do, just say record true. You also have to set the Cypress record key environment variable on Circle. And then you'll see test results, you'll see the video, you'll see the screenshots on failure. You'll be able to debug the failure much, much faster. You will also see the bodies of the test and test hooks right there on the dashboard.
That's a really nice looking dashboard. I like that a lot.
Thank you. We do like it. We work on it a lot ourselves. Here's the example that you gave, right? So imagine you don't want to run just 4 machines at once and run install in each one, even with caching, right? What if you run a single install job, install all dependencies just once, maybe build your web application, and then spin 4 machines, all waiting for the install job to finish, all reusing the same workspace, and now everything is pre-installed, everything is pre-built. Now we can just start testing. So spin 4 machines, because CircleCI orb is a meta text language, right? Spinning 4 jobs is as easy as just saying parallelism 4. That's a parameter, right? You use in your example as well. So you can spin 4 boxes, but only after install job finished. And Cypress Run automatically attaches itself to the workspace saved by Cypress install job. And then you want to record results to the dashboard. That's great. You use record true. But here's something that we do for you. You don't have to split the test files yourself. You don't have to load balance yourself. you can say parallel true. That's a flag our orb understands. And then every machine that joins this, this build, this pipeline, will go to the dashboard and will say, I'm running all the specs. Which spec should I run next? And all those 4 machines can load balance all the specs automatically. You don't have to use just 4 machines. It's all done for you. You can use 15 machines or 30, right? We are heavy users of CircleCI. So we are on performance plan where we can spin up to 200 boxes a thing in parallel. So we can actually set parallelism to 200 and get all our specs done in no time. This is how the dashboard is testing itself. You'll see that there are, in this case, 15 machines. They all join whenever the machine spun up, and they all split. I think in this case 70 spec files. And our algorithm for queuing up specs uses previous historical spec duration, so that the longest specs run first, and the shortest one run last. So you never have to wait for a long job to finish. So this is the most effective load balancing for the specs. And so we finished 1,200 end-to-end full tests in 3 minutes. If you find 3 minutes to be too long, guess what? We can change parallelism to 20 or 30, whatever we need to finish those jobs faster. And the orb controls all of it, right? Just 3 arguments and you have it all working. Speaking of the orb documentation, so let me go back to the page where I showed record argument. On the left, you see a column that says usage examples. I'm absolutely a strong believer that you need to create as many examples as possible. Literally, write 10 examples that cover all the uses of your orb. And when you're done writing them, write some more. Like, this is my biggest pet peeve with orbs. I see Vinny sometimes, even CircleCI, like, because I'm a heavy user of like node orb. I was like, there are no examples, right? There's like 1 or 2. But it's so easy to actually write examples because examples are all inside the orb source code. So this is our CircleCI Cypress orb. If you look at source/orb.yaml file, all those examples are already contained there, right? So when we publish them to the CircleCI orb registry, those examples become the links, and you will see them on the page. We actually take those examples and we test them before publishing. So we generate a mini circle YAML from each example. We validate the syntax, so we should never publish an example that's incorrect. And in addition to examples, we now started doing a longer recipes. Not a single example of a parameter, but instead showing how several orb commands and jobs can work together. For example, if you want to do install, test, release, how do you do that? Or install 2 different test jobs, release. So we started creating a longer recipes and linking actual repositories, so that even if this recipe gets out of date, you can still look up to date and look how it's still working. So please document your orbs or your YAML files, create examples, create longer recipes. Here's my tip, right? So Vinny already has shown that you can store artifacts like videos on CI, and then it will be stored with each build. If you want to just store videos using our orb, you just say store artifacts. It's pretty much the same parameter. And in this case, the screenshots and videos will be stored with each build, and you can look at them. I want to go back to how Circle uses Cypress slide that Vinny has shown before. So he has shown those commands. And notice that these commands are not using orb, which is a big no-no, right? I know not everyone can be perfect, right? But this is equivalent entire CircleCI config file to do what's on the left, but do it using the orb. You want to import the orb, and you want to run Cypress run job. Because you use Yarn because you can see it from checksum yarn lock, you want to say yarn true. In this case, Cypress install command will say yarn frozen log file. And because you use a custom command, yarn test e2e run, you want to say command yarn test e2e run. So we don't form our own default Cypress run command. And when you want to store artifacts, so it says store artifacts. And in this case, not only it stores the artifacts, Cypress videos. If a test fails, Cypress also will generate a screenshot image automatically. And those images are stored in Cypress/screenshots. So you want to store artifacts, both of those folders. So store artifacts in our orb will take care of it for you. But let's say if you generate additional reports, let's say tests, right? You can store them, and the orb allows you to run post steps using the syntax. So for example, if you generate Mocha Awesome report in this folder, you can store it, and it will be stored on CircleCI with each build. One thing that I really love using Circle artifact storage for is generating code coverage reports. So Cypress has a CircleCI orb, we have orb, but we have code coverage plugin that you use in Cypress to generate reports from instrumented source. And all you have to do when you use the Cypress run job is to say post step, just store that folder called coverage. So here's how it looks. That example that I've shown running, at the end, it will say saving code coverage and then code coverage report. So this will produce a folder called coverage with code coverage reports in different formats. And if you look at the test artifacts in CircleCI, by the way, what Vinny has shown is version 2 of CircleCI UI. And my screenshots are still using version 1 of CircleCI UI. You can switch back and forth between them. They're pretty much equivalent. But my screenshots are still look a little bit different. But on each job, you will see the artifacts tab. And in this case, you can see the coverage folder, different formats, including a folder with HTML report. And the best thing, if you click on index.html, CircleCI will show that folder using a static HTTP server, right? Notice that the link is just circleartifacts.com, right? It will show if you have self-contained, jam stack or static site, it will just be served, and you can see your static HTML reports right there very nicely. You don't have to do anything with them. So in this case, I'm showing the code coverage report from Cypress tests. The end-to-end tests are extremely effective at covering lots of code. So you can see I'm reaching 100% code coverage. And you can drill down into subfolders and individual files, still served from that build artifacts folder on Circle. And you can drill down and see that you're hitting everything in the source of your web application.
Yeah, that's actually one of my favorite features of CircleCI. Before joining CircleCI, I was a user of CircleCI too, and when I discovered that the artifacts basically work as like a static site server, we started artifacting our generated HTML reports for our test suites. It was so nice.
It's a perfect feature. Every time I look at some other CIs that don't provide it, I was like, such a limitation. And I think those reports are stored for, 1 month right now, right?
Yes, I think so.
Yeah. Okay, and if you use Cypress dashboard, right? If you're recording to the dashboard, you can see the videos and screenshots on Cypress dashboard, but for each build, there is a link back to the original CircleCI build. So you can easily go back and see the actual build output if you have to. By the way, we are heavy users of CircleCI. Okay, we absolutely love Circle, right? The Cypress test run itself is an open source project, and here I'm showing a typical workflow for us for building Cypress itself on Linux. So you can see that we spin from a build, in this case, 62 jobs. We test Cypress in so many ways, in so many combinations of environments. And this is just Linux before we actually release. So 62 jobs just to build one commit of a test runner. We also use Circle to build the Mac version of a test runner, because we have to build Linux, Mac, and Windows in 2 flavors. We are moving our Windows flavors to Circle as well. We just haven't finished the work yet, but we'll build test runner completely on Circle because we are so happy with the infrastructure, with the language. And once we build the test runner, right? Imagine, so you have 62 jobs just to build the Linux version, a little 11 jobs to build the Mac. We actually kick off those our test jobs in different repos where we say, okay, we have a new build of a test runner. Now let's test it on this project, on that project, on that project. So we know that we are not releasing a broken version or something that will not work. So if you look at the same status checks that Vinny has shown before, we spin a lot of test jobs. So 93 test jobs just to build one commit of a test run. And look, it's all Circle. We run Circle for everything pretty much. Only a few things still use some other CIs for Windows.
Awesome. Really, really happy to hear that. And that's holy crap, though. That's a lot.
We pay a lot of money per month to Circle, and we are very happy. I think we're getting our money worth. We are super happy with the syntax of our workflows. What Vinny has shown, how you can actually structure your YAML file. And even if you don't use orbs, right? Even if you don't use anything, you can still structure your own files in an orb-like fashion where you have reusable commands with static parameters that are analyzed statically, but you can check the syntax from command line before you push it, where you can actually see what happens when you process it, when you can see the fully expanded config file. But I think our config files for Circle look pretty nice. Very easy to understand. They use very little YAML magic, like with little templates. We still sometimes use it, but it's fine. But everything else is nice and easy to understand. And I'm almost done, but here's my slide where I'm comparing Circle Orb to other, I would say, ways of solving CI configuration problem, where GitHub Actions and Netlify plugins, they introduce completely different ways from the orbs, solutions to solving the complexity of running Cypress on CI. So CircleCI orbs are text substitution languages, or language, right? They take orb and they do text macro substitutions until they get the full thing. Cypress GitHub Action is just a runtime JavaScript thing that runs Cypress. Okay, so not config text, but a runtime thing. Netlify is just a plugin into the Netlify build system, all right? Completely different solutions. And here's my very opinionated, very, I would say, non-scientific comparison. All three tools make it super easy to correctly cache Cypress and run it. All three, great. Only Orb and Netlify make it so simple that you can use a single line in your configuration file and Cypress runs, right? The Orb is highly customizable. It's partly because it's already had 1.5 years of lifetime. We expanded, we kept adding features. Our users submitted pull requests adding features and fixing bugs. So there are 23 parameters where you can tweak the Orb execution. GitHub Actions have only 17. And Netlify plugin has just a few parameters. But in reality, the CircleCI Orb has so many parameters because it can do more. For example, because it can do parallel for and parallelism, it can actually control how many boxes you want to spin, right, on Circle. But you cannot do it with GitHub Actions. You have to write additional code to spin more boxes. And the same with Netlify. If you want, for example, to run a single install and then multiple jobs, well, you can do it with Orb easily. With GitHub Actions, it's kind of easy, but even this, I gave it a green check mark, but it should be like so-so, kind of yellow. And Netlify, you cannot control it. And finally, because this is all static text processing, you can validate your config for the Orb statically before you push it or before you actually run it, which is a big thing compared to JavaScript GitHub action, but you have to run it in order to see if you're using it incorrectly or correctly. And the same with Netlify plugin. You have to run it to see if it works or not. So in my humble opinion, the orbs is so far head and shoulders above the rest. And I'm kind of comparing orbs to GitHub Actions to Netlify plugins. I should have included AWS Amplify plugin that Cypress has. But everyone else is way behind. All other CIs, right, might get angry with me, but in my opinion, they are so far behind the orbs that it's not even funny, right? Okay, that was my spiel. In my conclusion, I have only one. You can run your full end-to-end test in a real browser on CircleCI with a single line. You can't beat that. Just try it.
Wow, thank you, Gleb. Holy cow, that was really appreciate all the detail and the time you put into putting those slides together. There were a lot more examples and information than I was expecting, honestly, and also really appreciate the glowing review of CircleCI as well. We like our product, and we hope it always makes us happy when other people do too.
Vinny, we give you nothing but our money every month and all our love.
Well, I mean, it's you know, it's honest, yeah. Okay, let's see here. Oh, my Q&A screen is not opening and I can't see the questions. Zoom
Well,
is
before
not.
we take the questions, right? Like we have this slide with contact information. So if you want to send questions to Vinny, you should send it to marketing-tech@CircleCI. And if you want, send me email. I'm Gleb@Cypress.io, or you can tweet at me at Bakhmutov. We're happy to answer any questions. And if you want to actually get a Cypress t-shirt, which I'm not wearing this time, but I should have, there is a link, cypress.io/circle, but just ask your opinion about this webinar. If you fill it out, we promise to send you a Cypress t-shirt, which is a hot commodity these days.
All right, awesome. Thank you, Gleb. Let me, okay, let's get to answering a couple of the questions now. We have a little bit of time left on the clock, about a little over 10 minutes, but I cannot get my, come on, Zoom. Here it is, found it. Okay, let's see here. Let's see here. How does parallelism, okay, so from Sophia, how does parallelism decide which spec file to execute first during parallel testing? And can you go into more details about the load balancer? Okay, so basically the CircleCI tool, when you collect test metadata, it collects timings of all the tests. And so the way it basically, balances these tests is by essentially it allocates the tests to different containers so that, roughly speaking, all of the containers take the same amount of time. I don't know specifically how it works deep down on the inside, but it basically, that's what's meant by load balancing. In terms of deciding which spec file to execute first, that's also, I think, indeterministic. I wouldn't be able to guarantee which tests get executed first, because it's randomly allocating these tests to balance out the times, right? And so generally speaking, this test splitting, I would recommend doing it on like unit tests in which the order does not matter as much. And then if you do have tests where the order does matter, then I would set those in like a before test configuration so that they always run before the other tests do, if they need to, if that makes sense. Let's see here.
Yes.
Slide.
And can I just, if you use Circle Cypress orb, and you use our parallel load balancing, but we use previous historical spec duration timings to set the order of spec files, which is optimal. That's how we do it.
Okay. Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you. Let's see here. Yes, Shaunak, we are going to, if you want the slide deck, Shaunak, I would recommend emailing marketing-tech@circleci.com if you'd like a copy of the slides. We're not preemptively sending them out just because it takes time on our part. And so if you would like those slides, though, just email that address that you saw in the slides there, marketing-tech@circleci.com. Let's see here. Trying to optimize CircleCI build times. Look at time it takes for each step. How do you know if the specific step contributes to the CircleCI build time? So Ting, I'm just trying to understand your question here. Basically, let me see here. Optimize CircleCI and build times. Look at time for each step. When you click into a specific job, how do you know if a specific step contributes to the CircleCI? So basically, the specific all the steps inside a CircleCI job contribute to the job time. Does it make sense? And so so basically a job is the job's total time is basically just the aggregate of all the times of the individual steps inside the job. Let me know if I didn't answer that, and then I can respond directly to you via text or something. Is there a limit to the size of artifacts that could be stored in CircleCI? Not as far as I know, but I do want to make a point that like the larger your file size is, the more you have like diminishing returns on speed. It would probably take you a decent amount of time to upload like a 5 gigabyte or 10 gigabyte file, for example. And whenever it's still uploading and the job's still running, you are burning through credits or usage on CircleCI, right? And so you kind of have to balance whether or not it's actually worth it for you to artifact such a large file, etc.
And I just want to add that I'm copy pasting the questions that Vinny is answering into the chat because the users might not see the question, right?
Oh yeah, that's right. Thank you. Appreciate it. Okay, let's see here. What if I have my application in a Docker Compose? Are there more services where there's more services that needs to run before the tests come into action? Okay, let's see here. This needs to be done in Cypress install step. Do you want to take this one or?
I can explain our philosophy, right? So imagine the orb is taking or supporting, let's say, as I hope, 90% of use cases. And when you want to do something else, like maybe spin another database service, right, while you're testing, in that case, set up your orb to cover as much as possible. And then remember how I did like CircleCI process, but actually showed effective config. You expand your orb, copy paste it in your file, and then add, your container, for example. So you do the orb, you get pretty much the effective config, and then you start customizing it beyond that. That's what I would suggest doing.
Okay, awesome. Let's see here. Question. CircleCI Cypress Parallel Execution Mock Awesome Report had a challenge to create Mock Awesome reports while running Cypress running in parallel execution, storing the CircleCI artifact, and could not merge them together. Can you please check if something can be done? So Sandeep, I would recommend opening a support ticket, and then one of our support agents can get to you and work on that with you. Let's see here. Does the orb take care of the browser installation? Does the orb take care of the browser installation too?
I can answer that one. So the orb doesn't install the browsers, but the orb has executors defined. And some of those executors, they use, well, actually all of them, the ones we provide, they are using Cypress Docker images. And there are executors that use images with pre-installed Chrome and Firefox browsers. So that means if you use one of those executors, there'll be a browser pre-installed. So yes.
Okay, let's see here. Hello, Gleb. I have to change something in my CircleCI configuration to start using Cypress Orb.
Well, I'm not sure if you have to change it or you can. Okay, if you already have config, then you just import our orb and add Cypress run, one more job. If you already have other jobs there. But orb is just one extra job that you can add. So you can add to existing config easily.
Okay. Let's see here. While running Cypress and CircleCI, I had to load Cypress installation in cache. It was time consuming while running pipeline into workflow. Is something can be done to avoid this? So let's see here. I think that some of these questions are starting to get a little bit deeper and more technical. And so if you would like to, please feel free to, again, email the addresses on hand and then we can specifically answer. We'll be able to answer your specific questions at a better, more detailed level. Let's see here. What are the main features CircleCI has?
But Vinny, I think, sorry to interrupt, like, so this question of loading Cypress in cache, right? I think it's related to caching it, right? In a pipeline from previous build. And that's exactly what orb takes care of for you, right? If you use orb, like Cypress install, Cypress run commands, they cache node modules and Cypress binary correctly for you, right? And if you want to cache them yourself, for example, you can see, first of all, you can consult our docs in general on caching, what has to be cached, but also you can just see what the orb does, like expands, and then you can do the same yourself if you don't want to use the orb, for example. But this is why you use the orb, so it takes care of you.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Let's see here. Does the orb? So okay, Bibian basically asked that question. Does the orb take care of the browser installation as well? And so I believe the answer to that is yes, right?
Yes, we use the executor. Yes.
Almon says it sounds like Cypress and CircleCI have separate parallel testing features. Does the Cypress orb use both or just Cypress?
So it only use Cypress because it's much, I would say, performant and simpler, in my opinion. But it's nothing prevents you from like taking what Vinny has shown, right, and just wrapping in your own commands. You don't even have to write an orb to have reusable commands like that. So I encourage everyone to do it.
Okay, let's see here. Okay, so it looks like we are coming up on time now. We have like 2 minutes left. Is there any last thing you want to add, Gleb? Apologies that we couldn't get to all of your questions here. There were a lot of them. And so again, if you have any specific questions at any time, you can always feel free to reach out to us directly. I actually did not type it in here, but if you have specific questions that are related to CircleCI, I can also answer those directly if you would like to. My email address is mton@circleci.com. Just posted it inside the chat there. So if you have questions, feel free to email me directly. I'll get to them as soon as I can.
I have to let me answer one more. Is that the question of mono repos? Like, will Cypress orb support mono repos? I think it does. Look at the parameters that we have and examples that go with those parameters. I think we cover two major cases where, for example, you install everything in a root, but run from a subfolder, or if you install things for Cypress testing in a subfolder and want to run tests there. So I think we support both. If not, open an issue, maybe we can take a look at that.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much, Gleb. Really appreciate you joining us today and giving us all that insight and information into, Cypress, how to use it and how to use it in the context of CircleCI, especially. Really thank you for the glowing reviews of CircleCI. And thank you to all of the attendees for joining us on this webinar as well. Hopefully you found it useful and informational. Hopefully if you are currently a user of CircleCI or new to CircleCI, etc., hopefully this can help you move forward with improving your end-to-end testing with browsers for your team as well, or at least give you ideas for it. Again, apologies if we didn't get to your question that you asked. There were lots of them, and so feel free to reach out to us directly. Slides and recording of this presentation will be sent to registrants. And so, yeah, thank you all again for joining us today. Hope you have a good rest of your week.
Take care, everyone. Thank you.
Take care. Thank you.